Hi, welcome to ReneMarie Stroke of Luck. I'm ReneMarie, and we always have such empowering, informative, wonderful shows, and they're all special. They're all special, and I say that this one's special as this relates to our faith, and in my world, because I can only speak about me, is that I believe all faiths are important. And even those that don't really believe they have faith, but believe in themselves and really are looking for answers, because we're all looking for answers. Today's show, we have a very, very two special guests. Mark Moore and his wife, Brenda Moore. Mark suffered a stroke back in 2007, but the not coincidence that I believe is that he suffered it at a baseball field, the same place that I suffered mine. He suffered his while his son was playing baseball, and of course I suffered mine as I was coaching softball. So that's the link that really not brings us here together, but really we could talk about. And then the really important bond that we have, and one of the reasons that I was sent their book was because it talks about faith, and it talks about surrendering to God and really trusting that God does his work for us, and we have to trust in him, which is a really, really, really hard thing. I don't know why my phone keeps doing that, but so let's file back a little bit. It was about a year ago that Sharon Bean from the American Stroke Association, who we speak about all the time, sent me a book, and she emailed me and she said, I put a book in the mail to you. I think this is somebody you love to have on your show. You both have the same values and the same faiths and the same mission and the same cause in your life, and that's to bring stroke awareness, but bring it through faith. So I got the book and I looked at it, and of course Judy, right away she contacted them to invite them to be a guest on their show, and they just do such incredible work around the world that it took us a year to get them onto the show. So we're really honored to have them on the show to share with us their faith, how Mark had to surrender to God, and how I know myself how challenging that is, how I struggle it on a daily basis. Now it's not so hard for me because it's something I do. As a matter of fact, as I was traveling in today, I pray, because between for an hour and 10 minutes I have the quiet time with God, and I do what he asks me to do. And he said to me, Renee, tapping on my shoulder, I want you to sing Amazing Grace today. So, I always got to do what God tells me to do, and I don't know why he wants me to sing that song, but I'm going to sing it. And Jim was so kind to kind of rearrange the timeline. And I really want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Sharon Bean for connecting us and really seeing that our purposes are together, and our mission and our foundation is together. We are lifting our voices and changing the face of strokes and aphasia locally and around the globe. So we're so happy to invite Mark and his wife Brenda onto the show today. Our board member Bobby Baby Walker. Is it okay, Jim? Because I can hear. You listening to it? Okay. I know, because I can hear it. So I just wanted to. Bobby Baby Walker, who was supposed to be on the show today. He's our board member. He suffered 3 strokes 2 years ago in 2017. And the common bond between Bobby and Mark is they're both Afro-American. And Afro-American really, I believe, if I'm not incorrect, it is the first leading cause of disability not for disability, but they're the most at risk. And today we're going to talk about, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about why that is. I have a American Stroke Association poster that I'm going to post, and we're going to talk about the risks and how you can prevent them. And it's really important. We're all one in the world, and we really need to help educate the American people, or the world, that of how to save their lives. And when I was reading, or I was looking at a YouTube video, I know that Mark had mentioned that we do plenty of press for how to prevent strokes, but one of his concerns is what happens after you have a stroke. I mean, how stroke recovery, and that's myself, and I'm sure Mark, try to bring hope to people. And in Mark's world, and we'll talk to him about this, that what he had to do was surrender to God and trust that God will help him to recover or recover for him. And once he did that, you will see when he gets on and he tells us his stroke story, is that he had miraculous improvement and recovery. He was severe. He had a major stroke, the same that I couldn't walk or talk after my stroke. So it really is an important show for everybody, because it brings to you your faith. Even I have been raised as a Catholic, believing in God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. But whatever faith touches you and whatever faith you are is where we ask that you just trust in and reach to, so that God could help you in your life, because life is really not an easy thing to deal with, and eventually something is going to affect your life. Something is going to touch your life, and it's what I've learned in my life. It's not what happens to you, it's how you handle it. So I'm really excited about this show, as I am about all our shows. So with that, I'm going to sing Amazing Grace. And because God told me on the way here that I had to sing that, Judy had to write the words out for me for the second verse, because I only know the first verse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing the first verse, sing the second verse, and then ask you to join me, because it really is to get into the understanding mode and the reverent mode, so at this show we can really have God present for us. And I think it's really honorable that our show is on a Sunday morning, because Sundays and Saturdays for the Jewish community, I think Friday night is for the Jewish community into Saturday, and then Sunday is out the Catholic faith's day, but every day you should do your God work, I believe. So with that, I'm gonna sing Amazing Grace, and please join me silently, or you can join me if you really want to sing the first verse and second verse. Here I go. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Please join me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. We'll be right back. Am I still on?
Yep.
Can I talk? Are they going to hear me? Oh, so Jim gets emotional because Jim is going to have surgery in 2 weeks. So he knows what the value of life. So we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, welcome back to ReneMarie Stroke of Luck. So glad everybody's in the holy space, and we're really happy to have this opportunity to share some hope to those that have suffered from strokes and really try to prevent those that for the world. It's the first leading cause of disability in the world. So we want to prevent that from happening, since 80% of strokes can be prevented. I think Mark and Brenda, I can't see the photo. Are you on, Mark and Brenda?
Are you here today?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Both of you, we're really happy. Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, as I was saying before, a board member of ours, Bobby Baby Walker and Kathy Walker, were supposed to be on the show, but Kathy Walker is in the hospital, and Bobby Baby Walker, who suffered the 2 strokes 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago, 2017.
I thought he had 3 strokes.
He did. He had suffered 3 strokes in 2017, sorry.
Okay.
So he couldn't come because he was up all night and he was really feeling the pressures. So he was going to the hospital. So with that said, Mark, please tell us a little bit about where you were before you had your stroke, because, we all think, like you had mentioned in all your interviews and your book, is you thought you had, your life in control. And what were you doing prior to your stroke?
Well, thank you, Renee. Well, prior to the stroke, it was, as you mentioned, in 2007, and it was an ordinary Saturday day in May, and I was taking my son to baseball practice. I was the assistant coach on the team. And felt wonderful. Took him to baseball practice, and as we got to the field, Renee, I could feel that I was losing my equilibrium, but had no idea what was going on. And at the time, I was 46. Didn't have high blood pressure. Didn't have high cholesterol. I'm not diabetic. Exercise, ate healthy. So I really didn't think anything was wrong, to be perfectly honest with you. And went through coaching baseball practice for 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, I realized that the symptoms had progressively got worse. And by the time we got off the field, I found myself now, I could barely walk. Wow. And as we went to the car, at that point, I told my then 15-year-old son that I thought something was wrong and I may have to go to the hospital.
Wow. So you were aware that you needed help?
Yes.
Wow.
I knew at that point that and again, I wasn't quite sure. Because again, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think that there was any way there was anything seriously wrong with me. And it was the day before Mother's Day, and to prove that point, Renee, when my son and I got into the car and we were head home, we stopped at a Hallmark store to get him so he could buy a Mother's Day card for his mother. And by the time we went in the store and got out, and you think about, what is that, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
The symptoms had progressed to the point where now I couldn't walk. I couldn't control my left arm. I couldn't do anything. And I came out the store, and I remember sitting on a flower bed and then falling down to the ground and taking the phone and calling my wife and saying, "Hey, can you do me a favor? I need you to call the ambulance, have them come get me." Wow. And they came to pick me up.
Wow. That's, did you hear the intro when I was talking about my stroke, which happened 30 years ago, also happened on the softball field. So it's very ironic, in God's world, that we both have that connection, that it happened on the softball field. And you were a coach and I was a coach, so it's very interesting. So, Mark, I always ask this question to my family stroke members, like, how did it feel? Like, because I don't think people can understand. Like, I felt like I was out of my body. Like, I wasn't in control. I mean, so how did you feel when you were experiencing your stroke?
And also, Mark, did you have any symptoms before that? Did you have headaches or any symptoms at all leading up to that day?
An excellent question, and the answer is yes. Early in the year, in January, I started experiencing severe migraine headaches about once a week. they would last maybe 2 to 3 minutes. But I went to the neurologist after the first one and said, "Hey, doc, what's going on? I'm getting these headaches, and I don't know and he ran a litany of tests, could not determine what was going on. We continued to run tests from January through May, could not determine what was going on, and what eventually what we found out was I was suffering from a blood deficiency, and the blood deficiency was causing my blood to clot, and that's why I had the strokes. And it was the blood deficiency and the minuscule blood clots in January that was causing those migraine headaches.
Wow.
So, but getting to your point, Renee, the day of the stroke, in terms of what I felt, certainly, as you all know, you went through this. You feel somewhat out of control. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to believe, and I didn't think there was anything seriously wrong because I was 46. I exercised. I ate right. I was healthy. For the life of me, I could not understand, and I was in denial that this could be anything serious. And it wasn't until I realized that, hey, I'm losing control of the left side of my body. Then I'm like, you know what? There's something seriously wrong. I better go to the hospital. But I'll be honest, I still didn't think it was a stroke. I just thought, hey, As a matter of fact, to the point when the paramedics came, when they looked at me, they said, hey, when's the last time you ate?
Yeah.
And it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, I probably had breakfast 8 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, I bet you that's what it is. You haven't eaten in a while. And it was a hot day that day. It was unusually hot in the middle of May. And they're like, hey, you're probably dehydrated too. We think that's what it is. So, again, it wasn't until I got to the hospital and they actually told me that I had a stroke. Then I'm like, okay, I guess I had a stroke.
Wow. Brenda, because you tell us a little bit about your history, because I know you were a nurse, right?
Yes, I am. Well, I'm a retired nurse, and at the time, God had blessed us in such a way that I was only working very, very part-time, and I was home. And so Mark was having these headaches, and we were really concerned about them, as Mark stated, for a number of months. And we didn't know what they were from. So we just kept at it. And we are true believers in making sure that we follow up and make sure that we go to our appointments and that we are, getting our exams, etc. So we're always talking about, well, we've been to this and we've done that, but we want to always make sure that we listen to our bodies, that we're paying attention, and that the Lord always puts things there for us to understand and to comprehend. We have to pay attention to listen to the whispers, which we weren't doing so much as we had been taught. And so to me, I think that the important part of being a medical professional, is that when it's happening to somebody that you love, all of that goes out the window, and you just become extremely vulnerable, just like the person that you love and care for. And that's important to know, that we are part of the issue, and that we are patients as well, and that some of that training is gone, and we don't really know what to do, just like everybody else. And so there is fear and confusion, and again, the word that I use a lot is vulnerability. And I was extremely concerned, still remembering some of my training, and we knew that we had to make sure that we called the ambulance to get him to the hospital right away. And I decided that I would meet them on site, as quickly as I could. And so we, managed to keep our heads about us as best we could. But it's still a very difficult and trying experience once you're in it, and when it's someone that's very personal and that you love.
Yeah, one of the things that I was talking to one of the hospitals in my area is that I would like to create a support team for the family members who are that their family member is going through a stroke now. Like, I would like to be able to go to the hospital at that moment and say, listen, I've been there. I remember being in a bed. I remember not being able to walk or talk, but I want to bring you some hope that you're going through this, but look at me and look at Mark, right, Mark?
Well said.
So my question before we get on the next question is, because this happened to Mark, with the blood, is there something that we could share with our audience that they could let their doctors know, like maybe just something to be aware of when they go to the doctor, like I'm having migraines, maybe it's this, can you check this? Because it was a long time before they discovered
they should ask for an MRI.
Yes. But it was a long time, right? It was a couple months. They never really discovered it until you had your stroke, right, Mark?
That's right.
Would they have discovered it sooner if they did an MRI or an MRA sooner?
I don't know. Ultimately started running MRIs on MRAs in May as the thing progressed, and we couldn't determine what was causing these migraine headaches. But what was happening was, and the belief is that every time they ran the MRI or the MRA, what was happening, it would be the day after I had a headache, and what was happening was these blood clots, these minuscule blood clots that was occurring would travel to the brain, cause that migraine headache, and by the time I got to run the MRI and MRA, the blood clot had left the brain, all right, and so they saw nothing. So I don't know, I don't think there's anything they could have done, outside of it. Someone would have said, hey, let's test and see whether this guy has a blood deficiency, but no one would have necessarily thought back per se.
Right.
So was this stroke a hemorrhagic stroke, a bleed?
It also ended up being a bleed. What had happened was the clots went to the brain and caused artery in the brain to dissect, and when that artery dissected in the brain, it caused blood to fill the cavity where the brain sits, and that would put pressure on the brain. And that ultimately is what led to, and I think when they started in the beginning, I went on a Saturday with the first stroke, and while I was still in the hospital on Monday, I experienced the second stroke. And to your point, what had happened was, because I was experiencing a blood deficiency and my blood was continuing to clot, it caused a larger clot form, went to the vertebral artery in the brain, of course that artery to dissect, and blood filled the cavity where the brain sat, which then led to the need to perform an emergency brain surgery, what they call emergency craniectomy.
Wow.
And that's what ended up, because of all the complications, when they performed the emergency brain surgery, I ended up being in a medically-induced coma for about 30 days.
Wow. That's and and I guess they put you in that coma so that you could be at rest and you could heal properly, because when and I can only speak from my experience, my brain was defragmented. So it had to be put back into place, everything. So you need to, especially in your case, Mark, where it was a bleed and you had this major surgery, they had to kind of like tranquil. Brenda, how did it feel to see your husband in a coma? I mean, God must have you had to really hold on to your faith.
Yes, it was extremely trying because, again, Mark talked about being someone that's always one that's in control. And we learned, of course, about being in control and not being so, because the Lord is truly the one who's in control. But I was not used to him having to be incapacitated. That was very new for me. There's a lot to be learned from that. I have to say that it's an interesting story in that the Lord certainly put a physician who would not have been caring for Mark in place at a time that we needed her the most. And she happened to see a scan that other physicians were reading at the time she was going to see her own patient, and she stopped because I just believe the Lord stopped her and to see these pictures. and said, this patient is in trouble.
Wow.
We need to do something right away. Again, I tell you that this doctor was not Mark's own physician. She just happened to be coming by.
Wow.
And she came up and spoke to me. We were in the waiting room, and my family and friends and I were in the waiting room because we knew they had rushed him to be seen as far as getting these new scans. And we were just waiting to hear what the scans had shown. This doctor we didn't know came up to say, your husband is in grave condition.
Wow.
And we need to do a surgery right away. I don't know you. She reached her hand out to me and introduced herself.
Wow.
And said, I'm going to move my patients right now. My schedule is being changed because I need to do an emergency surgery on your husband.
Wow. Wow.
And I said, we do what you can. The Lord is, really working through her. And we spoke about that just that quickly. She sent in papers to be signed, and I just remember after I signed the papers, I just remember falling to my knees, and I know that happened only because my family was there. I don't remember it all,
right.
But I cried out, and I think it was probably a very loud, shrill cry, a scream, and asked the Lord to please help Mark, because I didn't know what was in store for us, and it was just a cry. And I know that this I know to be true, because following that cry, I received a calm.
Wow.
Immediately received a calm.
Wow.
That it would be okay, that he had it, and I sat back down and waited and waited for that surgery. But to answer your question about how do you feel when someone is in a coma, that you can't speak to them and know that there's an answer, but I really believe that Mark could hear me, so we talked to Mark all the time. We were allowed to be in the room, and of course, when you're in intensive care following surgeries and that they're keeping balances with regard to spinal fluid and all that going on, they will just allow you to be in for short periods of time. And we had family come in. We were allowed to play music. We were allowed to speak softly.
Wow.
And that's what we did. And that was important to me. It kept me going and feeling like we were connected. And I talk about something that's very odd, and I don't know that other people have little rituals and things that you do to keep yourself from falling apart. But I had Mark's cell phone with me and my cell phone, and I would line them up on the waiting room table and sit one on top of the other, or make sure that the other one was always in contact with the other. So they just always sat side by side. It was an odd thing to do, but it was something that was really small that I felt that I could make sure that we were always connected. And my sister-in-law would laugh at me, and I said, "Oh, don't move the phone." I just wanted to make sure that they were touching each other at all times. So that's something that we did on a regular basis, and it was fun.
Well, if you I hope you'll follow us from here on out, and we'll follow you as well, because I know together we have to empower each other. But I've always speak of that the primary thing that's needed in recovery is love. To surround that patient with love. The insurance and everything else is secondary. You guys are the prime example that you surrounded Mark with that love, and you made sure that he felt, because he couldn't hear or listen or understand what you were saying to him, but you gave him that love. And that's a prime example to what we preach and we believe. So thank you so much for acknowledging that. Mark, you were the one in the coma. Did you hear them? Did you subconsciously, did you feel them?
I could hear some things and certainly feel things. And to your point, Renee, I tell folks when they go visit people to talk to them, because you'd be surprised, even folks in coma, sometimes they could hear and sense things. And I could hear and sense things. And there were times where I would tell Brenda afterwards things that was happening, and Brenda would go, "You remember that?" And I'm like, it's like like almost a dream of but I knew something was going on. So absolutely, it's important when people come to see people in the hospital that even if they may be even though they may be in a coma, talk to them. You don't know, they could very possibly hear you or sense your presence.
And also say positive things while you're in the room, because they can. And I've read a lot about people in comas, people who are in comas for many years, and they can hear what's going on. So you don't want to say anything negative in the room.
So Mark, let's because I vividly remember watching one of your YouTubes or reading it somewhere at the pinpoint moment that you knew you needed to surrender. Tell us about that.
Sure. I would say really the important, and I always tell people this, the kind of similar moment or the turning point for me was after being in a medically induced coma for 4 weeks and going through 2 weeks of inpatient rehabilitation. I was released and went to outpatient rehab, and I was in a 10-week program. And about maybe 2 to 3 weeks through that program, as I was leaving the rehab facility, and as Brenda was taking me from the wheelchair to the car, and struggling to get in the car, and realizing that, you know what, I've been here 3 weeks, and I still can't use the left side of my body, right? I'm still having difficulty remembering people's names, right? I can't walk. You know, I was struggling. And what I really want to tell people, because when people look at us today and say, boy, you don't look like you ever had a stroke, I want people to realize I struggled. And at that moment, I was struggling. And I was about ready to give up. And as we got into that car, leaving the rehab facility, heading home, I told Brenda, this isn't working. And Brenda looked at me and goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, this isn't working. I'm like, you know, these therapists, I had a physical therapist, I had a speech therapist, I had an occupational therapist. I go, they don't understand me. I'm never going to recover. I need a whole new therapist. Wow. And I tell people, they go, well, what were you doing? I go, well, let's be clear. I was a businessman. I was firing everybody. Because in the business world, when things don't work, you fire people. And that's what I was doing. I was going back to where I was comfortable, which is the business world. Right. And I was firing everybody. But to your point, Renee, that was a similar moment for me. Now, what really happened when I told Brenda, hey, I wanted to fire everybody, Brenda looked at me and said, you know, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm just not getting better. And they don't understand me, and I'm not going to get there. And Brenda, to your point, Renee, Brenda looked at me and said 2 things was very, very important. She goes, Mark, did you ever think that maybe, just maybe, God allowed you to have these strokes so He can use you to show people you can recover? And I'll be honest with you, I had not thought that at that point. I'm like, nah, I didn't think that. And I really thought she was just telling me that just to tell me to be quiet, right? But then the next thing she said, which is very important, she goes, Mark, I know it's hard right now, and it's hard for me to say this to you, but I gotta say, you gotta trust God. Because I know it's tough right now. It's tough for you to believe that because you can't walk and you can't use your left side. And at this moment, I know it's tough to hear, trust God, but you got to trust Him. Yeah. And for me, Renee, that really was a similar moment. And that was when I realized, and Brenda mentioned this earlier, and for me, this is difficult. And I tell people, as a business person and someone who's in the business world, control was a big part of my life. I was always in control, right? Right. The cities that we went to for business, I made those decisions, right? I was in control of everything. This was one instance where I couldn't be in control. And I really, and you used this word earlier, and I tell people, you really have to surrender. And really surrender, unconditional surrender, turn this over to God and say, you know what, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I will trust you. But I tell you, it all began when in that car ride, when Brenda looked at me and said, you know, I know it's hard right now because you can't do anything. You got to trust Him. And for me, that was a similar moment, Renee.
I always like to take the moment, like to really bring awareness to everybody. And let's share with everybody in how Brenda spoke to you. She didn't yell at you. She didn't talk to you like demand. Say it again. How she approached you, because to me, it's really important and for people in the world to understand that it's how you say things to people. It's how you treat people. It's how you present things to people that really does matter. So tell us again, like the approach that she took in sharing a really pinpoint moment in your life. How did she say that to you again?
Renee, that's a good point. And I tell folks, my middle name is Anthony, and Brenda and I, we met in high school, and we were high school sweethearts, and we've been together ever since. As I said, my middle name is Anthony, but Brenda has called me Tony for years. And at that moment, to your point, Renee, she didn't say Mark, she said Tony. And I tell people she used Tony for a purpose. And I tell people when she uses Tony, usually what she's trying to tell me is, I'm going to say something important, and you need to listen to me, okay? and I knew that when I'm like, okay, she's not calling me Mark, she's saying Tony. And that was her point, saying, look, I'm about to say something important. You really need to listen to me. But she said it very kindly. She wasn't yelling and screaming. She didn't poke a finger at me. She simply said, she pulled the car to the side of the road and simply said, Tony, did you ever think that maybe, just maybe, God allowed you to have these strokes so that he can use you to show people you can recover? And then she said, and I know, and that second thing was very important. She prefaced the comment by saying, I know it's hard right now to hear this because you cannot walk and you have difficulty talking and memory skills, but you need to trust him. And I know it's hard to hear that right now, but it was very compassionate. And I tell you, and to your point, Renee, I think that was part of the reason that I listened, because had she did the finger pointing and the yelling and screaming, it probably would have went over my head. But because of the compassionate approach, I listened to it, and Renee, that really became a similar moment. And I really tell people, I want people to understand, people have had strokes, and you've been there, Renee, it's hard. And recovering from a stroke is hard.
It's hard.
And the challenges are both physical and mental. It's hard.
Well, that's what I always bring to everybody's attention, that, you know, we look, you know, now I believe I'm defragmented and complete, and I still have some weaknesses. When I get tired, that's really when it affects me. But I want, like, people used to look at me and I looked good. I mean, I would even hide my right side. My right side is very weak, you know, but I would hide it. So people would look at me and not know what had happened to me. And sometimes they look at me when I was speaking to them and they go, like, what is wrong with you? Like, because they didn't know that really a stroke is a brain attack. And the outside is only a physical presence, but the inside is our brains. And that's why we bring forth aphasia. Aphasia is really an important terminology that we try to help people to understand, that, you know, people you have to be compassionate to people when you see somebody that's not speaking correctly, or you need to be aware and you need to find out more about it so that you could help them, you know. So I you know, it really does matter, you know. Brenda, so were you listening to God? Mark, what do I hear? Is it this?
No, it's a feedback from the...
It's a feedback, okay. Because I just...
The connection.
Oh, okay. So, Brenda, like, were you listening to God when you gave him that message?
I have to tell you that it was certainly subconscious. I know the Lord speaks to me in very different ways. And I have a devotion with the Lord every morning. It's varying times, but usually in the morning when it's very quiet, and the sun is rising. And I don't know that I hear his voice as many people do, but I know that I always ask in my devotions for the Lord to speak to me and speak through me, because I don't feel that I'm a very eloquent speaker, but I know that there are certain things that he tells me, and I don't always communicate them to others as well as I receive them. So my prayer is often that he speaks through me so that it will come out right and that I don't mess it up. Yeah. So that's a morning prayer for me every day. So I believe that the Lord just took over at that time because He always is listening. He knows exactly what's going on with us, each and every one of us. So I know that He was speaking through me then. I didn't really have to do anything but pull the car over to the side of the road and concentrate on my husband.
I always feel that it's usually the people that don't speak correctly that you kind of pay attention to, only because, like Mark said, you kind of switched up what you called him. You know what I'm saying? So God had to be using that particular moment to say, Mark, like, or Tony, this is the moment. You need to listen. And I always talk about Dominic.
And you need to have patience.
Yes, patience. I always talk about Dominic Cortellessa, who was an angel in my life that kind of knew how to speak to me to set me on the right path, So I get where you guys are coming from. So Mark, like, after you heard that and you surrendered to God, I heard that it was a very short period of time that you actually had made full, progress in your recovery.
And I tell people, as I go around the country and I talk to people who are suffering strokes, recovering from strokes, that when I had to make the decision that I simply had to surrender and turn this over to God, that's when really my recovery took off. The fact of the matter is, after 3.5 months after suffering 2 strokes and enduring major brain surgery, I returned to work.
Wow.
Part time. I was working, half days, and then 1 year to the date of the stroke. The stroke was in May of 2007. In May of 2008, with a lot of prayer and a lot of work, I was able to run a 5K in downtown DC.
Wow.
And complete it in 36 minutes.
Wow.
And I tell people that because it's important to realize I didn't walk, I actually ran. But none of those things would have been possible had I not surrendered. And I tell people, it's just amazing what happened in my recovery when I made the decision to just relinquish control. And when you relinquish control and turn this over, amazing. And someone asked me a few weeks ago, what does that really mean? And what I told the person, for me, what it really meant was when I went to rehab on Monday, prior to relinquishing control, when I went to rehab on Monday, Renee, I was looking for results on Tuesday, right?
Right.
I wanted to walk, right? I wanted to talk. I wanted to do everything, right? But when you relinquish control, you still work hard on Monday in rehab, but on Tuesday, I didn't look for anything.
Right.
I wasn't looking to walk. I wasn't looking to do anything, talk.
Right.
I'm like, it'll come when it will come. And eventually, it came, and then it just kept on coming. And every day, every week, things just continued to improve. And before I knew it, I'm back at work. Before I knew it, I'm running a 5K on the 1-year anniversary day. And these are things which, if you would have told me in May of 2007 that I would be returning to work 3.5 months after suffering 2 strokes and during major brain surgery, or that I would be running a 5K on the 1-year anniversary date, I would have told you lost your mind. But yet, those things didn't happen. And I say that because what I want stroke victims to realize is that, look, it's hard and it's tough, but you know what? There is hope.
There is
and
hope.
You have to lean on something. And for me, the hope was my faith. I turned to my faith, and my faith brought me through this process.
Yeah. I was going to say something, and I forgot what I was going to say. I guess it wasn't meant for me to say it.
Each patient, it takes time to recover. You were very fortunate and very blessed that you were able to recover in the period of time that you did. Some people aren't as fortunate, and it takes a little longer, but with faith and hope and rehab, it can happen.
I believe that the stroke happened to me so that I could continue to do the work for strokes. Like, you know, they always say, what are you going to make out of lemons? You're going to make lemonade, you know, like, and we have to look forward and decide what we're going to do with the information that God has presented to us. Am I correct, Mark, in my thought analogy?
That is correct. And the fact of the matter is, you know, Renee, had I not endured that illness, would I be sitting here talking to you, the two of you? The answer is probably no. But the fact of the matter is, what happened was, you know, I realized that every day I wake up, you know, I'm thankful that I'm sitting here today, because I know, and you know, Renee, this is a tough world, and this could have went any particular way. But it went this way, and I have an obligation. I really do have an obligation to help others, and that's what Brenda and I are trying to do. And Renee, you mentioned this earlier. You know, we spend a lot of time in this industry educating people on strokes, and that's wonderful. We should.
Right.
And I want to talk to people about prevention and recognition. But the area we need more work is in the area of recovery, because the fact of the matter is, you know, 25% of all stroke victims are under the age of 65. And the point of that is, these people have a long life ahead of them, right? And it's about quality of life. And we need to help people get back to a quality of life, because, and Renee, you were there, I was there. As a stroke survivor, we want to recover, but we want a decent quality of life too, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
We want to be able to go back to work again.
Yeah.
We want to be able to play with our grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
And walk our daughters down the aisle. We want to do all those things. And it's important that we spend more time doing it. So my point is, Brenda and I are now working with the American Heart Association on that area, and we use the term PRR, prevention, recognition, and then recovery. And in the area of prevention and recognition, I think as an industry, we do a wonderful job. The area that we can use more work in the area of recovery, and specifically within recovery, we think rehabilitation and more brain research is absolutely needed. And I was going to take a minute to mention this. As I talked about for me personally, and we go around the country, every week we talk to, you know, hundreds of folks every week about strokes. And when I talk to folks, people will look at me and they'll say, hey, Mark, you know, how long are you in rehab? And I'm like, well, I did 2 weeks of rehab as an inpatient, and then I did 8 weeks of rehab definitely was 10 weeks of rehab as an outpatient, for a total of 12 weeks. And Renee, people sit across the table and they're like, yeah, I had 2 weeks of rehab.
Wow.
Not enough.
Wow.
And you got it. And I go, you know, I'll be honest with you, it's someone, and you went through it, Renee, someone who's went through it, you know, to me, 2 weeks is not going to get it. And the problem is, and you all know, Renee, you know, most of the time when we do rehab, it's immediately after the stroke. A stroke is attacking the brain. So the brain has been injured and the brain is healing. So whatever you're learning in rehab, because the brain is in the healing mode, you can't retain most of that.
Right.
And it's so important that when you get home, you continue to rehab. I tell people, my full recovery is because I had 10 weeks of rehab, or 12 weeks of rehab. In addition, because when I got home, I continued rehab when I got home. And that was the benefit of having 12 weeks of rehab. Yeah. And if you don't do that, it just doesn't work. And the other point I want to make on this area of recovery, I told you there's 2 points. One was rehab, the other is brain research. We need to do more on brain research. The brain is an amazing organ and is capable of doing amazing things. And I was talking to a neurologist recently. He said, Mark, you know, we understand about 15% of the brain. You know, and as an accountant, I was like, you got to be kidding me. He goes, no, that's it, about 15%. We need to do more brain research. And I always tell this story because when I see folks will look at me and I'm like, well, you couldn't have suffered much brain damage. And, you know, Renee, I laugh when they tell me that because I'm like, oh, no, au contraire. I go, oh, I suffered brain damage. I go, right. I've lost 95% of peripheral vision on the left side of my body. Wow. And when I tell people, I go, hey, there's nothing wrong with my eye. That's because the brain cells have been damaged. Wow. And that's why I can't see. And when I couldn't use my left side, it's because the brain cells were scarred. That's why I couldn't use the left side of my body. So, absolutely suffered brain damage. But I always tell people this story, quick story. As a businessman, years ago, in the mid 90s. I was at a company and we did, it was all new folks, and we had to do the psychological testing, and we did IQ tests, and we did IQ tests, and I remember I sat with this psychiatrist. He said, "Hey, Mark, you scored 140 IQ test." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't know what that means, but okay." I fast forward to 2008, after recovering from the stroke. I wanted to know had I fully recovered, Renee. So I went online, I took the IQ test.
Wow.
I scored 140, and I was telling the group this, and the group looked at me and they said, "So does that mean you didn't suffer brain damage?" And once again, I was like, "Oh no, I absolutely suffered brain damage."
Right.
So they said, "Well, how do you get the same score?" And I'm saying, "The same score because the brain is an amazing organ."
And you're a coach. You know that it takes practice and it takes determination and it takes focus to accomplish your goals. That's one of the reasons that they allowed me to be an ambassador for a hospital, because I can go into their rooms and say, "Listen, it's going to really be a hard struggle, but you have to do the work. We'll be there to help you. We'll be there to cheer you on. We'll be there to see whatever you need to do. But you have to do the work. It has to come from you. You're the one that has to struggle. You're the one that has to go through it." Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct. Yeah, absolutely correct. And what I want to tell people is that brain is an amazing organ and it's capable of doing amazing things. And the brain is almost like a keyboard. It will rewire stuff. So don't think simply because you had a stroke that you can't get back to where you were, because what I tell people, part of the reason that IQ score was the same is because all the brain did was rewire itself, right? It's taking a different route. Right. So the brain cells that have been scarred, it's like, okay, well, we can't use those. We'll go a different route and we'll get to the same conclusion. And I tell stroke victims as I go around the country, I can sense this because as I do things, there's certain things I'll do. It may take me a nanosecond longer to do it than it did 10 years ago. I go, a nanosecond. And I believe that's because the brain has simply rewired itself.
Yes.
And it's taking a different route. So the long story, Brenda and I are working with the American Heart Association. As I told you, we talk about prevention, recognition, and then the third one, recovery. And specifically recovery, longer rehab stays and more brain research is absolutely needed, because, as I said, 25% of stroke victims are younger than the age of 65. Quality of life is important. People want to recover. We want to get back to our normal life. That's what we're committed to doing. It's important.
And we value and we appreciate what you're doing. It's an incredible, really dedicated for both of you. Dedication for both of you. We want to touch base a little bit about Afro-American men and strokes, because I know that you're the first that could get strokes. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
And just wait, just before I forget, because I'll forget what I wanted to say. Bobby Baby Walker, who was supposed to be on the show today, he actually, I said, his wife's in the hospital, that he has diabetes, but you said you didn't have anything.
No, I did not. And first of all, we will, before I forget, Brenda, I will make sure we keep Bobby in prayer.
Oh, thank you.
But Renee, you're right. African Americans are twice as likely to suffer stroke as other races, and is absolutely an issue in the African American community. Now, there's a host of reasons, and some of the leading causes for strokes: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, alcohol, diabetes, and obesity. But Renee, to your point, I didn't have any of those. I'm not a smoker. I don't drink. I'm not diabetic. I didn't have high cholesterol. I didn't have high blood pressure. And like I said, we don't smoke, we don't drink. But those are things in the African American community. If we could focus on eliminating those things, we will go a long way towards improving our chances of avoiding a stroke. But you're absolutely right. Education is the key here.
Right.
We got to educate people, and because a lot of people just don't know. And when I talk to people, and to your point, I was at a group a few months ago, and there was a young man there. To be honest with you, Renee, I thought he was a caretaker, right? Because he was sitting there, and I'm like, well, who are you here with? And he goes, no, I'm a stroke survivor. And I'm like, well, if you don't mind me asking, I go, how old are you? and he was 31. And I'm like, you're 31? I'm like, do you know what happened? And he said, in his case, it was cholesterol. He goes, my cholesterol was off the chart. He goes, Renee, he goes, I never had it checked. I never had it checked.
Wow.
So he just went through life, and what happened was his cholesterol got so high, he ended up suffering stroke, and now he's recovering.
Wow. Jim, could you show on the screen? We have that form that says some of the risks, why Afro-American men are at higher risk. If you could just put it on the screen for 2 seconds, just so everybody could see it. Is it on? Okay. Okay. So we just want everybody to take this. And you could put the other one up as well that shows take steps to prevent strokes. You have the power. So these are American Stroke Association documents that I got offline last night. Let's see, that one, Jim. Yes. So we just wanted to post them in our show so that you can always slide back. You can always look. But of course, if you have any questions, you can always go to the American Stroke Association online. They have a ton of resources. And as well as the National Stroke Association, all the other stroke associations and foundations around the world that really are trying to help us. Like, I really believe that we need to come together. We don't need to compete against each other, because our common goal is for health and recovery, and for to help people have some hope after they've suffered a stroke. So
I just wanted to mention to Mark and Brenda, the reason that I got involved bringing awareness was that my dad had a stroke, and it was a massive stroke.
Wow.
And I was the caregiver for 3 years and 3 months. He went from the hospital to, I even want to say that he didn't even have a healthcare proxy. And it happened suddenly. However, he never shared with me that he had severe headaches, and it was a bleed. And I brought his attorney to the hospital and got him to sign it. And I think it's very important to bring awareness about stroke, because stroke can happen to anyone at any age, even an unborn baby, and we must bring this to the attention of the public.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Absolutely. And you just said something that reminds me, because I haven't mentioned this, but I think it's important to mention when we talk about awareness. And we talk about these things about prevention, recognition, and recovery. And we talk about recognition. People need to recognize they're having a stroke, and we use the acronym at the American Stroke Association, FAST, F-A-S-T. The F stands for facial. The A stands for arm weakness. The S stands for speech difficulty, and Renee's doing it. And the T stands for time to call 911.
And we always like to add something to that, Mark. We always like to add that, yes, you have to call 911, but you need to let the ambulance know, or the 911 answering service know that someone could be suffering a stroke, because they will get right into stroke mode when they come, and they'll a little advance notice. And if they determine it is a stroke, like I know, that they'll let the hospital know on the way. They'll pass triage and go right in for a CAT scan. So it's really, time is of the essence when you're dealing with strokes.
And Renee, you are so right, and this is so important. I'm going to repeat it one more time. FAST, F-A-S-T. The S stands for facial drooping. The A stands for arm weakness. The S stands for speech difficulty, and the T stands for time to call 911. And to that last point, Renee, you mentioned, time is so important, because what we have found through the American Stroke Association, that for every minute we delay getting treatment, we are at risk of damaging 2 million brain cells every minute.
Wow.
And while we may have billions of brain cells, you don't want to lose 2 million every minute, trust me. So it's critical that we get to the hospital as quickly as we can to get treatment.
Wow. I want Jim to put up a photo of your book. We have a photo of your book to be shown. And once he puts it up, and he pulls it down. I'll let you guys share where you can get the book. So this is Jim's book, A Stroke of Faith. It really is a book that I recommend and Judy recommends that you read, and only because it gives you a story of someone that was really had. I mean, you both had faith in your life, but it took that particular moment for Brenda to share with Mark or Tony that he needed to surrender to God. So this book gives you a little story about that. And in the book, it shares his experience traveling through a stroke. And I believe that you are experiencing it. And you just have to take what you can from it and then move on. So if you could take the photo down, and then Mark and Brenda could share where we could get it, and you please talk about your foundation. And we just have a few more minutes on the show, but talk about your foundation and how people can research it.
Sure. I'll talk about the book, and I'll let Brenda talk about the foundation. If you go to Amazon, you can find the book on Amazon, A Stroke of Faith. And I also have a website, astrokeoffaith.com, where I post really blogs every Monday to help people in their recovery. And I think it's so important for Renee, you and I, as people who have suffered strokes, to give to others, right? You know, there's things that I found along the way that was helpful to me in my recovery, and I want to share with others. So, astrokeoffaith.com is the website. Every Monday, I think Tuesday. Every Tuesday, there'll be a posting, a blog, listing things that I believe people will find helpful in their road of recovery. And the book can be found at Amazon. Just go to Amazon, type in astrokeoffaith.com. You'll get the book. Well, I'm on Twitter and Facebook, author Mark Moore, and you'll be able to find me. I'll let Brenda talk about the foundation.
So our family foundation, the Mark and Brenda Moore Family Foundation, was started so that we could continue to give back and to reach others for the possible good that we could give hope in so many different ways. Our four-prong hope is really based on education, healthcare, Christian evangelism, and culture and the arts. And we just reach out to individuals as well as programs that are doing the best to serve our communities, both regionally, locally, and globally, that are doing good. And it's really giving our time as well as our treasure to organizations and causes that we feel are important. And that's really why we decided that we would do the work that the Lord has determined is important for us.
Wow. We're so happy we connected with you and we got to meet you, because you're doing incredible work. Thank you.
And if you ever come to New York, let them have advance notice and they will book you for the studio.
Yes.
Oh, that'd be great.
What a wonderful invite.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And, you know, we consider everybody that's been on our show part of our family now. And whatever you need from us, you have our numbers. Kate has our number. And I would like to thank Kate on the phone.
Thank you, Kate.
For, you know, Mark's assistant, for really connecting us and really doing the work. Because, you know, like with Judy does the back work. And it really takes a lot of dedication, a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations, a lot of preparation, a lot of scheduling.
Kate and I got to know each other really well.
Yes. So, you know, without them, you know, this show wouldn't have happened. So we want to give acknowledgement to them.
Absolutely.
Amen.
So, is there anything that you want to end the show in saying? I never want the program to go off the air without, because I don't want you to leave and say, "Ooh, I should have said that." So, is there anything that you'd like to say? Let Brenda, you want to go first?
I thank you for that. That we really want to remind folks that there's hope, and the hope is important because God brings that to us. We believe that if we listen very carefully to the Lord as He speaks to us, He will tell us what we need to be doing. I also want to remind people to listen to their bodies, to not give up when they are thinking something is wrong. That's really important because we really have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. We are responsible. The Lord puts us responsible to take care of ourselves. And so when something is not feeling right, please listen to your body and go and get some help. Find out what is wrong. And then if you don't get the answers that you think you need, ask somebody else. Find a professional. It's really important to do that.
I would say, and I thought of this because a little bit earlier we talked about this. People think that as believers, that when we get sick, we will automatically turn to our faith, and I will tell you that's not true.
I acknowledge that.
Right? I mean, we don't. The fact of the matter is, when we get sick, emotions will sometimes prevent us from turning to our faith, and that's why it's so important in that time to have others. And I was very fortunate I had Brenda, that to have others remind us, turn to your faith.
Yes.
And to turn to your faith, I'll leave with this: nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible with God. The fact of the matter is, Renee and Judy, I should be sitting there talking to you today, right? Yeah. When I was sick in 07, they're like, hey man, we don't know what's going to happen to this guy, right? He's had 2 strokes. He's had major brain surgery. We don't know if he's going to live, and if he does live, we don't know what kind of life he's going to have. And the fact of the matter is, not only did I live, but I'm leading a normal life and a full life. And the fact of the matter is, I tell people, look, nothing is impossible with God. I want to lead people with that.
Wow, that's funny because during the break, I had Jim put a photo up, and it was a rock, and it said, "With God, all things are possible."
Yeah.
What else do we have to say, right? What else do we have to say?
That's right.
Good ball.
Go ahead, Judy.
I want to sum it up in about 6, 7 words. Hope, faith, love, music, education, motivation, and awareness to the public.
Yes.
Let's keep the awareness going.
Amen.
Amen.
So let's end the show the way we began it, by singing Amazing Grace together.
7.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you, Brenda and Mark. It was an honor. It was an honor.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
both.
Family.
Yes. Thank you to everybody for tuning in today. And of course, we'll post it on our Facebook and on our website, and we'll put it on YouTube, and we'll send it to Mark and Brenda so that they could spread the word through our show. And please keep this show in your prayers, because we really do want to make a difference globally with this show, and that it really is the platform. And we're thank you to Jim And we're gonna keep Jim in our prayers over the next 2 weeks because Jim will be having a back surgery on July 28th. So
Jim.
on 25th. So we always blow our kisses. So on 3, we're gonna blow our kisses and say goodbye. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Brenda. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
Thank
God bless you all.
you. God bless you.
Yo no entiendo por qué tú ni más de nadie sabe qué pasó en mi vida. Yo no sé qué tú piensas, yo no sé lo que haré, yo no sé lo que estoy perdiendo. Yo no sé lo que va a pasar. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. No me puedes oír llorar. El día que caminaste por la puerta, todas las memorias fueron. Mi corazón está vacío, como si tuviera ayer. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. Mi corazón está sufriendo. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. No me puedes oír llorar. Usted está en mi sueño por la noche. Por favor, no peleemos. Y es tan difícil para mí y para ti. Yo, ¿qué puedo hacer? No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. Mi corazón está sufriendo. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. No me puedes oír llorar. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. Mi corazón está sufriendo. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. No me puedes oír, no me puedes escuchar. No me puedes escuchar llorar, llorar. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. Mi corazón está sufriendo. No me puedes escuchar llorar solo sin ti. No me puedes oír llorar.
wishing they're all dead. The lines cut off inside my head. I left here like a broken man, with no idea of where I stand. Oh, my mind clears. Lord, I shed all my tears. Oh, now baby, I was just waiting here while you moved on. Security, this newfound freedom you kept from me. The sound of all your loaded gun. This outbreak war has just begun. The sound of all your loaded gun. This broken man has already won. Oh, my mind clears. Lord, I shed all my tears. Oh, now baby, I was just waiting.